She was the quiet girl. No one noticed the janitor's daughter who sat in the back of the class, silent and overlooked. But when a teacher tried to humiliate her on the board, Sylvia Thomas did more than solve an equation. She shattered every expectation. This is the story of how a hidden genius rewrote the rules, challenged the system, and proved that brilliance doesn't ask for permission to be seen. At Westlake Academy, silence was a skill, and Sylvia Thomas had mastered it. 15 years old, brown-skinned, soft-spoken, with hair tied into a neat bun and notebooks always pressed tight to her chest. She moved through the hallways like shadow seen, but barely. No one whispered her name in gossip. No one invited her to study groups or birthday parties. She didn't belong to the world of country clubs, designer shoes, or last names that bought admissions with a check. She was the janitor's daughter. Samuel Thomas swept the very floors these students walked on. He cleaned up their spills, scrubbed away their graffiti, and smiled when they barely looked at him. No one knew or cared that he had once been on the edge of a PhD at MIT. He had walked away from that world when his wife's cancer made every other priority feel meaningless. Since then, he poured everything into raising Sylvia with quiet dignity and relentless love. What no one knew was that Sylvia was brilliant. Not just good, not just top of her class, brilliant. She saw numbers as colors, equations as stories, variables as puzzles aching to be solved. Her father taught her everything he knew, turning their small apartment into a lab of wonder. But Sylvia learned early that brilliance in the wrong skin, from the wrong zip code, made people uncomfortable. So she hid it, especially in math class, Ms. Eleanor Whitman's domain, Ms. Whitman ruled the classroom like it was a kingdom, sharp eyes, tighter smile. Her lessons were polished, her rules unbending, and her favoritism obvious. Students like Bradley Cooper, son of the school board president, could do no wrong. Students like Sylvia were lucky to even be tolerated. Until the day everything changed. It started with a pop quiz. Let's make things interesting. Ms. Whitman announced, scanning the room like a lion choosing its next target. She tapped the whiteboard. Solve this. A complex differential equation stretched across the board. Even Bradley frowned. Then she pointed. You, Sylvia. Let's see what you've been quietly absorbing. There was a chuckle from someone in the back. Sylvia stood slowly. Her pulse didn't quicken. Her palms didn't sweat. This wasn't new. Ms. Whitman had tried to humiliate her before disguised as opportunity. Sylvia stepped to the board, eyes narrowing at the equation. Then, after a pause, she turned. There's an error in your boundary condition, she said softly. As it stands, the solution isn't well posed. The room fell silent. Ms. Whitman's eyes narrowed. Excuse me, I can still solve it, but it won't reflect a real scenario unless we fix this. And then, with the most terrifying grace, Sylvia did exactly that. In clean strokes, she amended the problem and began working. Her logic was precise, flowing from line to line with clarity that even Bradley couldn't fake his way through. When she finished, she turned back, not in triumph, but in calm. Ms. Whitman didn't applaud. She sneered. Where did you learn that, my dad? Sylvia answered. Impossible. You cheated. The word rang out like a slap. Students stiffened. Bradley actually leaned forward. I didn't cheat, Sylvia said. You just didn't expect me to know the answer. Principal Stevens. Now. The walk to the office wasn't new. What was new were the whispers that followed, the eyes that watched. Inside the principal's office, Samuel was already waiting, still in uniform, still calm. He'd seen this coming years ago. Ms. Whitman had already filed a formal complaint: academic dishonesty, disruption, and insubordination. Principal Stevens looked uncomfortable. But rules were rules. Unless the rules were built on the wrong assumptions. The next day, Sylvia was summoned before the school board. It was supposed to be routine, a hearing, a formality. It became something else entirely. Ms. Thomas, one board member said, "We are told you solved a graduate-level equation unaided in front of your class. Is that true?" Sylvia nodded. "And your father tutors you?" "He taught me everything." Samuel, still wearing his Westlake janitor badge, finally spoke. "I was a math doctoral student at MIT. I left before my dissertation, but my daughter, she's beyond where I ever was." There was a pause. Then, one of the board members, a woman in a beige blazer with tired eyes, lifted her hand. "We'd like to verify her abilities. Not because we doubt you, but because this is extraordinary." They brought in Dr. Eleanor Chen from the State University. Cognitive testing, custom equations, advanced reasoning tasks. By the end of the day, Dr. Chen returned with a simple statement. "She's not just brilliant, she's operating at a postgraduate level. Her reasoning is fast, elegant, and original. You don't see minds like this often, and almost never at 15. The board fell silent. But something else filled the air now: respect. And then came the consequence. The school launched a full review of Ms. Whitman's grading practices. What they found shocked no one except, perhaps, the people who had chosen not to see it. Over a decade of student testimonies, minority and working-class students consistently marked down, emails laced with condescension, letters from parents ignored. Ms. Whitman was suspended, pending termination. She didn't return for weeks, but Sylvia did. And she didn't just return for herself. "I want to help build a program," she said at the next board meeting, "not just for kids like me, for any student whose talent is hiding behind silence or circumstance." Thus, the Exceptional Student Program (ESP) was born. Dual enrollment, individualized mentoring, peer-led study labs, designed not for privilege, but for potential. The media caught wind of the story. Sylvia's photo appeared in headlines. "Janitor's daughter redefines genius at elite school." She didn't smile for those photos. She didn't want to be a mascot. She wanted change, and she got it. Months passed. Sylvia led math labs, mentored younger students, and quietly began winning competitions across the state. One medal, then another, then a national spotlight. Then, one day, as she was setting up chairs for an ESP seminar, Ms. Whitman walked in. Older, smaller, no makeup, no blazer. Just a woman with too much regret behind her eyes. "I came to apologize," she said. Sylvia looked up but said nothing. "I failed you. And others. I built a classroom that rewarded privilege and punished difference. I see that now. I'm sorry." Sylvia studied her face for a long time. "I don't forgive you," she said. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I hear you." Whitman nodded once and left. It was enough. In the spring, Sylvia won the Texas Mathematical Scholars Invitational. She declined television appearances, refused to be treated like a symbol. "I'm not here to be exceptional." She told one reporter, "I'm here to make sure no one has to hide to be seen." And then, one bright Saturday morning, Sylvia stood outside the Westlake Auditorium. In one hand, she held her competition trophy. In the other, her father's. Not a medal, a mop handle. "I'll finish the rest," he told her gently. But she smiled. "No, we'll finish together. And together." They walked out, not in silence, not in shame, but in the kind of light no system could ever dim. From that day on, Westlake Academy was never the same. And neither was Sylvia, because she no longer belonged to the shadows. She belonged to the future.